If you consume vitamin B12 every morning, what you're doing to defend your wellness might actually be placing your cardiac and neural health in jeopardy. Particularly if you are past 60 and utilizing standard prescriptions, this is a topic you definitely must understand. Retirees, if you ingest vitamin B12 every single day, pause and view this before you swallow your next pill. Right now, as you are viewing this, there is a process occurring within millions of elders across the country that has absolutely no physical discomfort linked to it. No lightheadedness, no chest pressure, nothing that would cause you to set down your mug and phone your physician. And yet, it is silently increasing the likelihood of strokes and cardiac harm in individuals who are doing everything they believe is correct. One of the most relied upon supplements on the rack, vitamin B12, is generating risk when it encounters the incorrect pharmaceutical. And here is what your practitioner likely hasn't mentioned to you. When you mix large amounts of B12 with one of two frequent prescriptions, it produces a compound termed homocysteine that functions like grit on the interior linings of your vessels, increasing stroke likelihood by several times. Today, I am disclosing which two drugs are risky to pair with B12 after year 60 and precisely how to defend yourself. Before we begin, leave a post and inform me where you are viewing from. Press that follow button and enable alerts because I distribute vital wellness data like this every week. Now, enter your age in the posts right now, just your age, because what I am about to relay impacts differently based on how long you have been utilizing these drugs. Here is something worth noting before we proceed further. A report shared in the Journal of the American Medical Association discovered that elders who utilized high-strength B vitamins, including B12, over a prolonged span actually exhibited heightened cardiovascular concerns under specific circumstances compared to those on smaller amounts, not lower, higher. That discovery startled a lot of individuals in the clinical community. But when you comprehend the process, it makes total sense. Let me speak about Dorothy. Dorothy was 71 years of age, mentally sharp, a former classroom teacher. She strolled every morning and consumed a bunch of vitamins every day with breakfast because she had heard that after 60, the system stops taking in nutrients the way it formerly did. B12 was at the peak of that list. She was happy about being prepared. What Dorothy didn't realize was that she had been using metformin for type 2 diabetes for almost 8 years. And for 8 years, nobody had ever sat down with her and clarified what metformin does to B12 uptake over time, or what happens when the system attempts to balance. Her daughter observed that Dorothy had been feeling more fatigued than normal over the previous several months. Not drowsy, tired, just hollow in a way that rest didn't mend. Dorothy told herself it was maturity. When her blood results were taken, including her homocysteine count, the data indicated what had started to become a frequent trend. Her homocysteine was significantly high. Her B12 counts were actually elevated from pills. But the two things together narrated a tale of quiet vascular irritation that had been growing for years, while Dorothy did everything she believed was right. Post Dorothy if this narrative sounds familiar. Let me clarify exactly what is occurring inside the system and why the pairing of B12 and these two drugs generates a concern that routine screenings almost never detect. The first drug is metformin. If you deal with type 2 diabetes, there is a very high probability you are using it. It is one of the most utilized drugs in the nation for managing blood sugar. It is truly helpful. But metformin has a secondary effect that most users are never plainly informed about. Over time, particularly over years, metformin conflicts with something termed intrinsic factor in your stomach. Intrinsic factor is a substance your gut creates that functions like a transport tool for B12. Think of it like a cab. B12 enters the cab and the cab moves it to where it must arrive in your circulation. Metformin quietly impairs that cab system. It makes it less dependable, less steady. So your practitioner sees low B12 counts and suggests, use a supplement. And you do. You go out and purchase a high-strength B12 pill because more seems like better. For a period, your blood counts of B12 rise, and your practitioner says everything looks good. But here is what that blood count is not revealing to you. It is not revealing what is occurring later on. Because when B12 cannot be correctly handled and moved due to the impaired intrinsic factor setup, it starts to engage with another molecule in your circulation termed homocysteine. And homocysteine is where things become truly risky. Homocysteine is an organic acid your system creates naturally. In tiny quantities, it is benign. Your system utilizes B vitamins, including B12, B6, and folate to change it into something helpful and remove it from your circulation. But when that change cycle is broken because the B12 is not being correctly taken or handled, homocysteine accumulates. High homocysteine in the circulation does something very distinct and very hurtful. It functions like grit on the interior linings of your vessels. Press that heart button if this detail is assisting you understand what is occurring in your system. A study group at Harvard Medical School explained it this way. High homocysteine doesn't trigger a sudden block the way a clot does. It triggers chronic friction. It bothers the vascular wall. It makes it rigid. It makes it simpler for deposits to grow and tougher for the pipe to widen and shrink the way a fit vessel should. Think of your vessels like a supple rubber tube. When they are fit, they expand and snap back with every pulse. When homocysteine has been rubbing those linings for months or years, the tube becomes more like a stiff plastic duct. And stiff ducts snap. They don't bend under stress, they break. In the circulatory system, a snap like that is a stroke or a heart event. How many of you have been utilizing metformin for over 3 years and also consuming B12 vitamins? Be truthful with yourself right now, because this pairing is occurring in people's bodies every single day, and almost nobody is linking the points. Now, the second drug I must inform you about is one that even more individuals are utilizing, and its pairing with B12 is distinct from metformin, but in some manners even more erratic. These are proton pump inhibitors, frequently called PPIs. These are drugs like omeprazole and pantoprazole that minimize gastric acid. They are suggested for reflux, acid irritation, and ulcer defense. And they are extremely frequent among elders because acid reflux becomes more common after 60 as the gastric system alters. But PPIs do something that most individuals never hear about at the drug counter. They minimize the gastric acid that is required to detach B12 from nourishment in the first place. Your system requires a sour setting to dismantle the protein links that grasp B12 in food. When you minimize that acid with a PPI over months and years, your food B12 uptake falls greatly. A report shared in the Annals of Internal Medicine tracked over 25,000 users on long-term PPI usage and discovered that after 2 years of steady use, PPI users exhibited notably lower blood B12 counts. After that discovery, what do most practitioners do? They suggest a B12 pill, which seems logical on the surface. The issue is that in specific people, particularly older adults with decreased renal function, the B12 pill is not handled and cleared effectively. It builds up in the circulation in a state that engages poorly with the homocysteine cycle we just mentioned. But here is the portion that is notably concerning. Some users on long-term PPI usage develop something termed rebound acid overproduction. This means that when they quit the drug, or even when the drug is cleared overnight, the gut overcreates acid in a balancing act. During that rebound phase, the high-strength B12 pill is being handled in an unstable setting. The uptake becomes inconsistent, and inconsistent uptake means inconsistent homocysteine control. Some days the setup clears it, some days it doesn't. When was the last time your practitioner asked you specifically whether you were on a PPI and also consuming B12 at the same time? Enter never in the posts if the reply is never. I want to view that count because I think it is going to be startling. Now, here is where everything we have studied merges. The homocysteine link is the center of this whole matter. Homocysteine is one of those figures that almost never appears on a routine blood sheet. Your practitioner checks your fats, your blood glucose, your thyroid, perhaps your B12 count itself. But homocysteine requires a distinct check, and it must be specifically requested. The Cleveland Clinic has termed high homocysteine a major and undernoticed risk factor for vascular illness in adults over 60. Yet most elders have never had it checked in their lives. Here is why that counts so much. When your homocysteine counts remain high over months and years, 3 things occur inside your circulatory system. First, the inner coat of your vessels becomes irritated and starts to lose its organic texture. Second, tiny rusted bits of LDL cholesterol find it simpler to sink in those irritated linings and form deposits. Third, the deposits that form in an irritated high homocysteine setting are more likely to pop unsteadily, meaning they snap off and move in the circulation rather than staying put. That final point is the one that explains strokes in individuals who have no big blocks on scans. The deposit was there, it was fragile, and it broke away. Experts at the Mayo Clinic have discovered that high homocysteine is found in a large number of these so-called hidden strokes. The trigger was not magical. The correct check was never called. This is not intended to scare you without reason. This is intended to provide you the facts that place the control back in your palms. And now that you comprehend what is occurring inside the system, let me inform you what you can actually do regarding it. The reply is not to quit taking B12 entirely. B12 is truly vital, particularly after 60. Lack triggers nerve harm, exhaustion, mental decline, and yes, vascular risk of its own. The target is not less B12. The target is cleverer B12. First, if you use metformin or a PPI, the most vital thing you can do now is ask your practitioner to check your homocysteine count and your active B12 count. Not just total B12 in the blood, active B12, the state your system actually utilizes. Total B12 can look fine while active B12 is low. This gap is vital, and it is a gap many routine checks miss. Second, the type of B12 counts immensely. Most pills on shop shelves hold cyanocobalamin. It is the cheapest type to create, and it requires your system to do several change phases before it can be utilized. For older adults on metformin or PPIs, those change phases are often broken. The type called Methylcobalamin skips most of those phases. It is already in an active ready state. Research shared in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition discovered that methylcobalamin increased working B12 counts more steadily in older adults than cyanocobalamin at matching amounts. Third, the amount counts more than most individuals realize. High-strength B12 pills in the span of 1,000 to 5,000 micrograms daily are commonly bought and commonly taken, but the system can only take in a tiny bit of that without intrinsic factor. The rest fills the circulation in a state that may push the homocysteine imbalance we mentioned. A more precise amount of 250 to 500 micrograms in methylcobalamin type, taken with a B6 and folate pairing, gives the homocysteine cycle everything it requires to work correctly without taxing the system. Fourth, speak to your practitioner specifically about your drug list in regards to your pills. Take this to your next visit as a distinct plan point, not as a minor query, as the main topic. Say, I want to talk about my B12 usage in regards to the drugs I use. That talk alone could alter the path of your vascular wellness. Let me inform you about Beverly because her narrative is the one I want you to keep with you. Beverly was 74 years old and had used a PPI for 14 years and pill supplementing with B12 for the last 5 of those years. Her daughter had viewed a clip about homocysteine and heart wellness and pulled her mother in with a saved page. Beverly was doubtful. She felt good. Her blood stress was managed. She strolled her pets every day. Her homocysteine came back at 31 micromoles per liter. The healthy span is under 15. At 31, she had more than twice the count linked with greatly high stroke risk, and yet she had no markers, no alert, no hint, just a digit on a sheet that clarified exactly why her vessels were laboring harder than they should have been. The pill type was moved to methylcobalamin. A low-strength B6 and folate pill was added to aid the homocysteine change route. The B12 was clocked away from the PPI time to boost uptake. A recurring homocysteine check was planned for 90 days later. When Beverly returned 3 months later, her homocysteine had fallen to 17. Not ideal yet, but shifting in exactly the correct way. She told me she didn't perceive how weary she had been until she started feeling less weary. If you have been doing this for years, it is not too late. The system has a grand capacity to heal and fix when you provide it what it actually requires. The vascular swelling that homocysteine triggers is not permanent when found before a big event. Beverly confirmed that in 90 days. Here is your tidy task list. First, check your drugs. Are you using metformin for sugar or a PPI like Omeprazole for acid burn? Second, check your B12 pill. What type is it? If it says cyanocobalamin, you should swap to methylcobalamin. Third, check your amount. If you are taking more than 1,000 micrograms daily, you are likely overusing it. Fourth, book a homocysteine check. Phone your practitioner tomorrow and specifically ask for a homocysteine level check along with active B12. Fifth, add B6 and folate aid. These work together with B12 to handle homocysteine correctly. What you have studied today is this. Metformin and B12 generate a risky link through the intrinsic factor route that leads to high homocysteine and vessel harm over time. Proton pump inhibitors minimize the acid setting needed for B12 uptake and generate an unstable handling setting that breaks the homocysteine cycle. Homocysteine is almost never checked on a routine sheet, and high counts in elders are a major undernoticed cause of stroke and heart events. The mend is not halting B12, but swapping to methylcobalamin at a cleverer amount with B6 and folate aid. Post below and tell me if you use metformin or a PPI and take B12. I want to see how many of you this involves. And if this clip assisted you understand a risk you didn't know lived, please post it with someone over 60 who is taking these drugs. Your post could truly save someone from a stroke. Don't forget to like and join for more fact-based wellness data that your practitioner simply doesn't have time to tell you in a 15-minute visit. This is not clinical advice. Always talk with your medical expert before making edits to your vitamin plan, especially if you use drugs. Thank you for trusting me with your wellness training today. You now know something that most individuals have never been told, and that facts belongs to the people you love too. Guard your heart, and I will see you in the